What's up, everybody? You're back with Worlds Collide and YouTube's favorite couple, me, JW, and this one's Miss Diva Talks.
What's up, y'all?
And, of course, with the latest release of Call of Duty Vanguard, what better video to talk about with our favorite company, man. Let's go. We're talking about Activision here and why they're hated. I don't think they're as hated as much as Rockstar, and we're going to get into that on the next episode. But I never really knew why they were hated. I mean, unless you count, like, you know, the whole Battle Pass thing, but that's neither here or there because we got, you know, cross-platform finally. Let's go. You want to go ahead and see why they hated them?
Yeah, I didn't know that they were hated like that. I mean, they at least give us a new game every year.
2 good games every year. Let's go see. Unlike Rockstar.
Exactly.
I made this video called Electronic Arts Why They're Hated, and one of the comments under that video stood out to me. It said, frankly, Activision Blizzard is just as bad, if not worse. They fly under the radar more than EA manages to, and there were many others expressing similar feelings. I think you would agree that EA and Activision are comparable companies. They've had similar evolutions, and today are viewed in a very similar way by the gaming community. It's hard to know which is truly hated more than the other, but EA is the go-to one to complain and make jokes about. To me anyway, it seems like they function as sort of a lightning rod, attracting some of that negative attention away from the others. And look, I'm not trying to defend or put down either one of them, but I have witnessed some pretty strong hatred toward Activision, and I think it makes sense to take a look and try to explain some of the reasons behind it. If you're not familiar, Activision is one of the biggest makers of video games. They've been behind some of the most successful franchises that the industry has ever seen. I am talking about Guitar Hero, Destiny, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and, well, of course, Call of Duty. In 2008, they made a deal that made them the owners of another popular video game publisher called Blizzard, which gave them control of all these other major titles, including World of Warcraft. That deal helped Activision leap ahead of Electronic Arts in terms of sales, and still today, by almost any measure, Activision remains the bigger of the two. Many people have disapproved of the merger and argue that they've been changing Blizzard for the worst, which I guess right there could be a potential reason to dislike them. However, to keep things simple, I'm going to mostly ignore the Blizzard end of things from this point and keep things focused on the Activision brand. I have identified 5 main reasons behind the hatred, and I should say that the first one is easily the biggest, to a point where the following 4 reasons could be considered extensions of it, and that is their CEO, Bobby Kotick. It is a complicated issue because on one hand, he is responsible for most of the things that people don't like about Activision, but on the other hand, he is easily the biggest reason behind the company's success. In fact, I think it's a safe assumption to say that Activision would not exist today without him. I say that because in the early 1990s, when the company was deep in debt, losing money, and in desperate need of direction, he was the one who came in and he saved it. He led a team that paid $440,000 to gain 30% ownership, enough control to place himself in the position of CEO. Once he was in charge, he made a bunch of changes that...
So, real quick, so I had to pull up the information, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's what I was doing here. So, it's funny because 3 days ago, Nintendo, who makes a Switch,
right,
joined in on the calls with, and I don't even know why they joined in because Nintendo they don't have no Call of Duties. I don't know if they do, but Nintendo is not really a game console that I would consider like a competitor.
I mean, they have Mario and...
Yeah. I mean, a real competitor for like real gamers. When I think of gamer, like the gaming industry and real gamers, I'm thinking the PlayStation, PC.
PC comes to mind first.
Yeah, PC.
Xbox and PlayStation.
And Xbox. You know, and Xbox I count as an extension of the PC. You know. But basically it's because of how the harassment and how he runs the company.
Ah, okay.
To where Xbox had put out a statement was like, hey, you know, we're actively watching the situation because we are against, you know, how their CEO is. Saying what
a PR statement.
Yeah, saying what because Sony and Xbox did their own statements and whatnot, and it was like, well, hey, they're calling on it to resign, but of course he's not going to resign. Then another one was like,
I mean, you just heard how he made himself CEO.
Yeah. And then, of course, Activision Blizzard, this is from 3 days ago, has said that, hey, we're going to form a committee to look into the issues. And then a lot of people saying, hey, he needs to resign right now. But that goes into say, you got to give him, he may be the most hated guy out there, but you got to give him credit for creating a the best gaming developer out there, publisher out there. Besides, because when I think of game developers, I'm thinking obviously Activision.
Yeah.
For obviously the Call of Duty series.
Obviously.
EA for, of course, The Sims, Madden, PGA Golf, and Need for Speeds. And, of course, 2K underneath the umbrella of Rockstar and whatnot for NBA 2K.
Yeah.
I think the PGA 2K or whatever. And, of course, other countless games. So you got to give this guy his roses, I guess.
Yeah.
That over the past 3 decades have raised the value of the company to tens of billions of dollars. So before we get too deep into all of the hatred, I think it's important to understand what was happening with Activision in the days before Bobby Kotick and how he was able to save them. The company goes back to 1979, a time when the video game industry was dominated by Atari. David Crane worked for Atari as a video game developer and I guess overall was feeling disrespected by the company. See, at that time, each game was generally created by a single person, and I think he was reasonable in requesting that the designers be credited on their games and even receive some kind of royalty payment based on how well their game sells. But the management at Atari wouldn't honor those requests, so David Crane and many of the other designers were upset about it. It all escalated when Atari sent out this memo that listed the sales figures for each game that they sold over the past year. The intention of it was to let everyone see what the market responded better to so they'd be able to adjust their designs accordingly, but it completely backfired. In the words of David Crane, when I saw a memo that the games for which I was 100% responsible had generated over $20 million in revenues, I was one of the people wondering why I was working in complete anonymity for a $20,000 salary. Not long after that,
And see, even to this day, that's still a problem.
Yeah, and I just put the stats up of what Activision Blizzard, what their their revenue was for 2020. It was $8 billion they brought in, and they have a total of assets is 23 mil. So they're up there, and they're up there. So as far as the money they bring in, definitely it's there because I don't see them going anywhere.
Exactly.
Now, if you're an investor, then obviously this would be a great time to buy. But don't take relationship advice from me. I mean, financial advice from me. But with all the bad press going on, at the end of the day, bad publicity is okay as long as you're bringing in the numbers to back it up.
All right, EVE. All publicity is not good publicity, but okay.
And 3 other key designers named Alan Miller, Larry Kaplan, and Bob Whitehead left Atari to start their own video game development company, and I like this. They called it Activision so they would appear before Atari alphabetically. In 1980, they released some of their first games like Boxing and Checkers, and by 1982, they had released some of their best sellers like River Raid and Pitfall. Actually, Pitfall was created by David Crane himself, and I know that because the designers were always given credit for their games.
Pitfall, designed by David Crane for Activision.
And all of these games, by the way, were made for the Atari 2600. They were the first company, other than Atari, to make games for that system, which made them the first ever third-party developer. Today, most video games are not made by the company that makes the console, and Activision, all the way back in 1980, was the first company to break that tradition. It was a strong start for them, but things took a major turn in 1983, when the entire video game market came crashing down. You could even make the argument that Activision was somewhat responsible for it. Their success as a third-party developer made a bunch of other companies want to enter that market by doing the same thing. But instead of competing with Activision based on quality, most of them chose to take the easier route by competing with them on price. Before you knew it, the market was flooded with all of these low-quality, rushed-out titles that made the public shy away from video games in general. From there, Activision was never the same. They were forced to downsize, all 4 of the founders left, and they transitioned into making computer games because that was the stronger market at the time. The computer games seemed like a logical step, but from what I can tell, they never had much success with it. It led them to buy this company called Infocom that was known for their very early text-based computer games. The following year, they changed their name from Activision to Mediagenic when they started making software for business purposes. When Bobby Kotick took over, I'm guessing he was more interested in that Activision name than anything else, because it still carried a reputation of quality. Right away, he changed the name of the company back to Activision Activision, he refocused on games and moved their headquarters away from their competitors in Silicon Valley down to Los Angeles. He embraced that reputation by releasing some high-quality, well-received games. By the later part of the 1990s, they used that reputation to make deals with Disney and other studios to make games using their characters. They started acquiring competing developers, and by the 2000s, they were once again...
Wasn't it your favorite or something like that?
Yeah, man, on my Game Boy Color, man. I even got the little light on that bad boy, man.
I actually still have my Game Boy SP.
I don't know where mine is at. It's probably lost in the basement when the flood happened. But I know I can go get another one, so I ain't tripping.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I'm not putting my business out there.
I wouldn't get ready to say it. I know what you're talking
They're not
about.
about to run my place out of pocket. I'm going to be spending more money.
Again, among the top of their industry. So back to my list. Bobby Kotick, since he first took over, he adapted this overall profit-focused approach to running things. This right here is the core of the issue, right? Many of these video game companies give off the impression that their primary goal is to make money, to squeeze as much from it from their players in any way that they can. It's a tricky situation.
Rockstar.
Situation, because in so many of these cases, it seems like what's good for the company is bad for the players, and I don't know if anyone represents that concept better than Bobby Kotick. He is like a hero to investors, but a villain to the customers. For example, when he made this joke about how the company's goal was to take all the fun out of making video games. Obviously, that's a statement that doesn't go over well with the players and the public in general, but he made that statement to the investors where it did go over well. So for the rest of my list, I'm going to be talking about things that stem from Bobby Kotick and his profit-focused approach that have not been received well by the gaming community. The next reason I have is lack of originality, because Activision sticks so closely to this model of investing all of their resources into proven, profitable franchises as opposed to taking some chances by producing some new, original stuff. I mean, you can see it. How many Call of Duties or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or Guitar Hero games have they released that are typically not all that different from the ones that came before it? Going back again, a big part of Bobby Kotick's initial comeback was releasing titles based on previous successes like Zork or Pitfall. In that deal in 2008, when they took control of Blizzard, they received the rights to all of these video games, and when referring to the ones that Activision didn't want to continue, Bobby Kotick said, "With respect to the franchises that don't have the potential to be exploited every year on every platform with clear sequel potential that can meet our objectives of over time becoming $100 million plus franchises, that's a strategy that has worked well for us." See, it's things like this that make me think he is embracing his role as a villain. I understand that is their proven strategy, but I'm sure there was a much gentler way to say it that doesn't include the word exploit. Either way, there are many gamers out there, probably many of the people watching this, that would rather see something new and original come from Activision rather than the 17th Call of Duty game. My next reason is an extension of that: ignoring franchises. Their strategy of exploiting franchises doesn't just prevent originality, it also prevents them from pursuing beloved franchises that maybe don't have $100 million potential. Spyro is a good example of this. They acquired the rights to the franchise in that 2008 deal and have done very little with it. The Reignited trilogy in 2018 would be the biggest thing. It remasters the first three games as well, but the fans want more. It is the same thing with Crash Bandicoot. Those original games made by Naughty Dog were the reason that I wanted a PlayStation in the 1990s. Obviously, there have been some less well-received games that followed, but Activision took over the rights in 2008, and it took them about a decade to really do anything with it. They canceled development of this game called Crash Landed that the fans were really looking forward to, and it wasn't until 2017 when they released, again, this remaster compilation, and then Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time in 2020. I'm just saying, if you're a fan of these iconic PlayStation characters or something else that they own the rights to and refuse to utilize, I imagine that you're pretty upset with Activision for not doing much with them. My next reason is a wrongful termination lawsuit that happened in 2010. Now, this is a crazy story. See, Infinity Ward is part of Activision. They are the video game developer that makes the Call of Duty games. In 2002, two of the founding members of it were Vince Zampella and Jason West. Well, in 2009, Activision was pushing to have their next Call of Duty game called Modern Warfare 2 to be released in time for the holiday season. Allegedly, Bobby Kotick and Activision promised a percentage of the video game sales to Vince and Jason and the entire Infinity Ward team if they had the game done in time. And they did finish it in time. It came out in November and was actually one of the most successful releases of all time, with sales of hundreds of millions of dollars almost right away. That meant that Vince and Jason and the rest of the team were set to receive $54 million from those sales. A couple months later, everything went south. Before any money was paid to Jason and Vince, they were fired from Activision, which according to their deal meant that they were no longer entitled to the money. Those two claimed that they were fired out of nowhere, which led to a wrongful termination lawsuit. Activision claimed that the firing was justified because they were acting inappropriate, and the word that was used was misconduct. Then Activision filed a countersuit claiming that they wanted to get fired because they were working with their competitor EA to establish a new company separate from Activision. I don't know if that claim was accurate or not, but they did in fact work with EA to start a new company called Respawn within a few months of the firing that went on to create the popular game called Titanfall. I feel I should point out that this situation has some major parallels to what happened between Atari and Activision 30 years earlier. You know, it's just Activision on the other side of it now. And then the Infinity Ward employees came in with their own lawsuit against Activision as well, so the entire thing was a mess. In the end, Activision settled these lawsuits for undisclosed payments, each thought to be in the tens of millions of dollars. No one outside of it truly knows what happened there. It comes down to who you want to believe, but the entire situation did not do much to help the public's perception of Activision. My last reason, you know it had to be coming, microtransactions. I'm sure anyone who has spent much time playing something made by Activision has encountered these. They are certainly not the only company that does it, but they are one of the bigger offenders. Okay.
Battle Pass.
I mean, well, not even just Battle Pass. It's also just the skins too. If you play Warzone. Mm-hmm. But I would say this is because of Fortnite. How Fortnite basically is a microtransaction pimp, and then followed by EA.
I mean, you know, for little kids who, you know, have access to their parents' credit cards, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing with a lot of these games on your phone and whatnot, you have to have a credit card on file. Same if you're playing it online, you gotta have a credit card on file. So yeah.
And it fits into this category of things that make money, are good for the investors, but not appreciated by the players. So there you have it, 5 reasons united by a common theme as to why Activision is so hated. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about Activision? Are they just kind of following the trend of the industry, or are they taking things a little bit too far? It's hard to deny that they do put out some amazing games, and maybe that's why a company that receives so much hatred is able to be so successful. Everyone's willing to put up with all the negatives to get to the positives. Let me know if you agree with that, and any other thoughts you have about Activision or anything else in this video, leave them in the comments.
So, Activision, I don't really hate them.
I don't either. At least they come out with a game.
Like, yeah, do I love getting a 20-second Call of Duty? Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah, I don't hate Activision at all.
Rockstar, yes.
Nah, if we're gonna talk about hate, definitely Rockstar / Take-Two, whoever.
I'm not going to put Take-Two in this because they give me 2 kind of year. Rockstar, I hate. They deserve to be dragged to the street and shot close range with a 12-gauge shotgun.
Okay.
That's how much I hate them. But yeah, the link to Company's Man's video and to his profile is going to be in the description below. Our links to our respective channels is going to be in the description below as well. If you like this video, hit that like sign right there. Hit the subscribe button that's right next to it. Hit the notification bell as well, because this ain't the first or last video that we're going to drop.
Yeah. And you know what? Since we're talking about Rockstar, and I know for a fact the Company Man has a video on Rockstar, let's do that next.
Bonus episode!
Let's knock it out real quick.
So we're going to give y'all that next week. So y'all got to tune in, and y'all go see that. And then, meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and play the latest Call of Duty Vanguard, and we'll see when we see you. Any last words?
Nope.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.